So welcome to our second to last fall coffee at 10. We have another one next week with Liz Ahrens, talk about the Prussian Society. I'll tell you more about that again. So we're really happy you're here. Welcome to Coffee at 10. We want to always thank our members for supporting all of our programs and our volunteers, and Alyssa, who always runs the show, and Comfort Keepers for their ongoing support of visual arts programming. And so my name is Sheila. I think I just met a couple of you, but most of you are here. And so I'm really excited to introduce Rocco today. It's been a pleasure to work with Rocco on this watercolor society show. We met down in Traverse City to collect the work. It was beautifully packed, and it's just been a pleasure to work with. It's been really easy to facilitate this exhibition. And I'm super excited to hear about Rocky's work today and his experience. I'm just going to tell you a little bit about Rocco. Rocco has spent over 50 years as an artist focused primarily on abstract watercolor painting. Rocco earned a Bachelor of Fine Arts degree from Eastern Michigan University with post-baccalaureate studies in Master of Fine Artwork at both Wayne State and Eastern Michigan University. And currently, Rocco is the President Emeritus of the Michigan Watercolor Society after serving for more than 10 years on the board holding various positions. He also holds both a signature membership and a Great Lakes Fellowship designation in that group, and you can learn more about that from Rocco's talk, or we'll have a Q&A afterwards if you want to learn more about that. He also has memberships in the National Watercolor Society, the International Society of Experimental Artists, and the Brighton Art Guild. And this is really interesting because Liz Ahrens, do you know Liz Ahrens? She was the director here.
Yes.
The president years ago. Her talk next week is called Should I Join? So next week, her whole talk is about membership. So this is a nice, going to be a nice connection between your talk because you are so active in these organizations. Rocco's artwork has won several awards from different nationally recognized artists, the MWCS annual exhibitions. He's also been asked to jury various community exhibitions and provide experimental color workshops. I think that's something we ought to do here. We have an experimental watercolor workshop. Rocco is currently based in Michigan and has exhibited in a number of galleries in Ohio, Michigan, and Arizona. Rocco is going to talk a little bit about social media, how artists can effectively use social media. And Rocco's social media following includes over 7,000 on LinkedIn, 2,000 on Facebook, and over 500 followers on Instagram. And we can give you the link to those too if you're interested in seeing them. Also really exciting is Rocco has 3 solo shows coming up this year, Oliver Art Center at Perrystown and the Ann Arbor City Club, and a number of large works going into the Crane Communication Building. And Rocco also exhibits many other places, including Scottsdale's Arts District. So we're really excited to have you here today, Rocco. So I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you. Is the screen big enough? Let's just see how this works here. Okay, good. Well, thanks for the introduction, Sheila. There's one other organization that I just joined in the fall, and that's the Chelsea Painters Group. It's a select group of painters, and they invited me, and it's a great experience. We get together every Tuesday when we're there, and we work together. We have lunch together. We talk about future opportunities for the organization. And how many of you are watercolorists in here? Do you belong to a local group at all? Did you? And why don't you do it anymore? Okay. We need you back. Okay. I mean, Michigan Watercolor is limited in what it can offer other than a juried exhibition by a nationally recognized painter, whether it's male or female. We try to mix it up. and bring the show around the state. So you're seeing the award show. The original show is 60 pieces, typically. And then we try to find other locations within 100 miles of the annual exhibition. This year we were at the Danos Museum as part of a 3 exhibition. They've got big spaces. So we took one of the rooms and we had a reception for all 3. So it seemed like it was all just for us. There's hundreds of people there. And it was just awesome because they came through and saw our stuff as well. And then we go around the state. And this year was a little different because the Danos kept it all summer. And here we were a few months. So usually we're at 1 month at a time at a location. And but as soon as this is done, I think Monday, the Greater Flint Art Council will pick it up there. And we picked up for January the gallery at Cherry Hill. It's a theater, Cherry Hill and Ridge in Canton, Michigan. And that's where the final destination for what's left of the show, because we keep selling pieces. So, which is a great thing. But if you have any questions after about some of the pieces, I'll do my best. I know many of them. I know them personally, or I know their style because it's very similar to what they do year in and year out. And getting into the show. Okay. I'm going to talk about Michigan Watercolor Society. It is kind of near and dear to my heart. When I was in grad school at Eastern Michigan, head of the art department was Kingsley Calkins. Just a nice old guy. He was like your grandfather. And when we go into his critique sessions every Friday, he'd look at your work and he would try to find something nice to talk about. Not this thing sucks. There's no clarity. There's no dimension. There's no, whatever. There's no structure. It was, I like how you did this in the corner. So you're left there feeling somewhat positive, but after knowing him a while, you knew you had to get some work, get it done right. You had work to do on the piece to make it actually work properly. So, but he said, look, you should join the Michigan Watercolor Society. I go, what's that? Well, I got in, I joined, and as a MFA student, my work got accepted in 1978, I think it was, and it was the Midland Arts Center. And so that was just, I've never been in a juried exhibition other than student shows, and getting into a show with all these Michigan artists that are, professionals or whatnot. And it really sunk in for me. And it left an impression that I said, someday I want to give back. And my wife and I moved back to the area about 6 years ago. But prior to that, knowing I was coming back, I got engaged with Michigan Watercolor. I volunteered. And volunteering, some people see it as a negative thing, but I saw it as an opportunity to learn about the organization, learn about the skill set within the organization, learn about the galleries around the state. And so I was in IT sales for 40 years, but I sold desktop publishing systems in the 90s when they were hot. So I said, look, I can probably do a better job on your newsletter. So I did the newsletter for 3 years. They asked me to be president, and I said, me? You want me to be the president? And I said, okay, I'll take it on. And it afforded me the cachet to go to galleries and say, look, we're Michigan Watercolor. We'd love to have a show here. It's top-notch quality, juried by, someone that's not in the area. And it helped me find galleries. So I come to places like this, and I go, we have our annual, do you want it the travel show kind of thing? Well, if it doesn't quite work out, would you like, Sheila was mentioning the signature membership. Vicki and I came up with that because we hadn't had one. And I said, we have a signature show. Would you be interested in that? That didn't work timing-wise. I got 150 paintings framed and ready to go. So it created opportunities for me by volunteering and knowing that my mission was I'm going to be cranking out artwork and I want to get it out there. So since I've been retired for 3 years, I've cranked out close to 200 pieces. And we have a beautiful home with a studio and a gallery. And I'm living the dream that I went to college for. So BFA at Eastern, some post-bac work at Eastern. I didn't want to leave, to be honest with you. I was in a fraternity, college fraternity. I just didn't want to leave. I didn't want to find the real world, but I eventually had to. Join Michigan Watercolor. Yeah, this is an older slide, but I'm still with Tara. But a friend of mine in the IT world, he's a photographer. Oh, he took over a gallery in Scottsdale, Arizona in the art district. And he said, like Sheila was telling you, I got 7,000 contacts from my business days on LinkedIn. Well, now I'm showing them my artwork. So they're seeing it, and these people all know me. And whether it's in Europe or Asia or in the States. So this guy says, look, I want your artwork in my gallery. I said, well, I don't usually ship it. I usually drive it, but I'm not driving to Phoenix or Scottsdale. So learned how to package my smaller pieces, sent 15 there. And Vicki and I went to, they have a reception, like they have an art walk almost every week, but then they have a big one every month. So we went to that. And I was surprised to see how many people that I knew that lived down there in the wintertime. So they came to the show, and it was awesome. So work is still there, thank God. So we'll see what happens. If you can't tell, I was a salesman for 40 years. Uh, I lived in Ohio for 20 years. Actually, Paul, near Dublin. And I I'd landed some large opportunities in our space. And my wife and I had just adopted 2 kids from Russia. And she said, either you move us down there or you're coming back because you're disrupting our routine every weekend when you come home. So I moved down there for 20 years, and kids were raised down there. So I've been on the board of Michigan Watercolor, and I said, look, you tell me when you don't need me anymore and I'll get off. But so far I'm still there. So Michigan Watercolor was an organization that was started back in the 40s by Wayne State's professors, U of M professors, people from the DIA, some people from the commercial art world in the area, Cast Tech, if you're familiar with that. And they got together, and after several meetings at the Scarab Club, if you're familiar with that, beautiful place to be an artist. It's an art residency program from back in the 20s or whenever they started, and formed the Michigan Watercolor Society. And the whole purpose was to focus on water media and water media artists and promoting these artists. And I hope they're looking down and saying I've done a good job during my run as president during COVID and all that kind of stuff. But they kept it going, and these professors, and it was mostly artists or professors and students and people in the professional worlds that were. I met a guy named Tom Hale. He just did the show he just juried the open show at the Cherry Hill Theater Gallery, and I talked to him because I used to see his fancy car designs in watercolor that he would enter in the Michigan Watercolor Show back in the 80s, and they would get in every year. So what do you get being part of the Michigan Watercolor Society? We have an annual exhibition in each quarter of the state, or we try to. We have an award-winning travel show like this one here today. And we try to get the show out to some galleries that don't usually get the attention that they normally would to see this kind of show. This piece was done by one of our founders, Mary Jane Bigler from Wayne State, a very experimental artist. She taught for 40 years or so and was probably the strong arm of keeping the organization together. I met her once, I think, in the 70s when I was going to school. So they created the organization. They had people as presidents. So this William Bostic, he was a commercial artist. And back in the day, they didn't have social media to promote their shows. They would create a poster for the annual exhibition, like this one that I did for our 75th. And they would put them in bookstores, art art stores, and different libraries to promote the annual exhibition, which was mainly probably in the Detroit area at the time. The DI had numerous shows for Michigan watercolor in either the main museum or in some of the auxiliary facilities they had in different places, like in Grosse Pointe and some of that kind of thing. One of you will get one of these, or I brought two of these. So, if you ask questions, you might get a shot at taking one of those home. But anyways, William Bostic, he did one of Old Main, which is a big building on Wayne State's campus. And one of my colleagues who I went to school with, who did this painting right here, Paula Zacks, this abstract piece here, she brought the poster from 1968 or something, and she says, "You deserve this." So I have that poster from William Bostic, so it's kind of fun. This guy here, Ted Bren, I can't pronounce it. What is it? Burkowski. Yeah, that sounds right. I met him via email in his 80s. He was living in Arizona somewhere, and I was anxious for him to see my work, and he gave me a great critique, and I was on cloud nine. I use it as a quote I think on my website. But anyways, he was in charge of exhibitions one of those years. He reached out to Andrew Wyeth to be a juror. And this is prior to him being, what we know of him today. He still got turned down, but he sent a nice letter. And I don't think I have the letter, but we found it in the archives. So this was our first exhibition. This was the catalog of the first exhibition, and that was it. Back then, it was too expensive to photograph work. Eventually, the catalogs were created with just black and white images, and then you'll see what they look like here today. If you want this current exhibition, it's $20. You pay the folks here, you can have it. This is Louise Nubili, another Wayne State professor, very abstract. The pieces that I saw of hers were paper glued on, watercolor paper pieces cut, glued on, sticking out three-dimensionally. So she had the main painting background, if you will, in different colors, adding pieces of paper with different watercolor tints and tones, and created these, put them in these glass cases, and just very experimental. Let me see some of the highlights here. So the third show in 1949 was at Alumni Hall in Ann Arbor. And the first 40 painters were considered chartered members because they'd been in 2 shows at that time. They made them almost like what we called our signature members today. And the 10th annual was at the Scarab Club in 1956. They started offering money for people to win awards. Big bucks, $100 for a prize. We gave out $10,000 this year in awards. So the top prize was right here. You got $2,000, or at least $1,000. That's in the catalog. Commercial artist, does excellent work. He just got a signature membership at the National Watercolor Society, and that's a pretty big deal. And once he's not quite old enough to retire. When he retires, I'll get him on the board, and he can take over for me. 61, we had a national show, so we invited people nationally, and they did it at Wayne State. And we had 2 people from our group in the show. 25th was at University of Michigan Gallery, and I don't even know where that is today. You guys know where it is? Is it still there? Is it near the Union? Well, that's where the gallery is. So it's in the gallery. Okay, okay. Yeah, then I know where it is. I mean, in the museum. Okay. Because I live 5 miles from there. Uh, then our 30th was at the DIA and was curated by someone from Washington, D.C. And so that was a big deal. This is Stanley Rosenthal. He was a professor at Wayne and was president of the Michigan Watercolor Society. And he wasn't too thrilled about separating water media because he said art is art. I don't care if it's water media or house paint. Art is art. Until his painting got in the annual exhibition, and at the DIA, he pushed and pushed, and we got our 50th at the DIA. We got a space, and I think it states here that he didn't care for watercolor or for watercolor organizations, and felt that members were burdened by too much isolation, too much technical emphasis, not enough awareness of modernism and contemporary issues. We were just focused on our watercolor techniques. With the 50th annual exhibition, he said that the juror was tough, the competition was fierce, and the membership made a step forward in this exhibition. The DIA mounted a great show. And so apparently he was happy. But he was a character. He's passed away recently, but real character. The 60th was a member show, founding member show. So when I became president, I was trying to think of ways to get people more engaged. So in 2019, I found as many past presidents as I could to exhibit a show in the Black Box Gallery at the time. And this lady over here, forget her name, Marilyn Dewinskas. Thank you, honey. Right. She was in her 80s, living in Nashville. She shipped 4 paintings plus one from Mary Jane Bigler, who was her instructor at Wayne State in the 50s. And she came, you see, she had the wheelchair behind her. Some of the people that were there were her students, you know, all our age or younger, a little younger. And she was so overwhelmed by this, she started painting again. She couldn't see very well. Her hands didn't work. She's 86, 87 now. She had a 100-piece show last year. With a lot of help around her. She lives in, like I said, in Nashville with her daughter. And calling me all the time because she can't type, but somehow I'm on speed dial. And I told her, I said, if anyone deserves our first Lifetime Achievement Award, which is another award we came up with to promote our members, it's got to be her. We had the show, our 75th is where she got her award down at the gallery down there in Detroit. What's on the poster? And because I couldn't get the DIA to call me back. It was at the K-Rod Gallery in K-Rod, Elaine K-Rod, and in the Hannah Center, which is a seniors program kind of thing. Had a great show. She invited people from all over the country, her family. I think she had 50 people herself at the reception. And we gave her this award. She was overwhelmed. And she's written articles for our newsletter. She's still teaching mentally. And just if there's any encouragement of painting in your older years, she's it. I'm hoping just to get to 80. I'm giving myself a 10-year block to crank it out. And then if God willing, I'll be doing it longer. So we got all these are all past presidents of the organization. And it was a fun event, at least for me, putting it together. And Vicki and I came up with a signature membership status, finding ways to encourage people to get more engaged, either as entering our shows or becoming a board member. So the signature member meant that you've gotten into 4 of these annual exhibitions in the last 10 years. And now I think we have close to 60 members over the last 3 years that we've done this. And the Great Lakes Fellow, Vicki researched all the other statewide organizations and gave us some options for the board to pick, and we picked this. And so the Great Lakes Fellow is, if you've done 3 years on the board and you're a signature member, you get that designation as well. So you can use it on your, your email thing or whatever you want to do as being a signature or Great Lake Fellow member. And I know people are dying to get to that spot. We have a few that are right on the edge of getting, their next show that they get in, there'll be a signature member, and they're kind of geeked about it. So it's working. The mental process of it is working. I kept hearing from one of our old board members, we're not as diversified as we used to be. We're not experimental enough. Our show doesn't accept other things other than water media under plexiglass in a white mat. So I said, why don't we just have a secondary show where you can do anything you want to do? It doesn't even have to be watercolor. It could be acrylic. It could be a sculpture piece. I don't care. Just whatever our members, because our members do a lot of different things, right, Linda? I mean, you do a lot of different things. And so I had a show. That's all it took was finding a gallery. We did it at the Black Box Gallery that year. And the funny part was 90% of it was still watercolor matted under plexiglass. But it all worked. And I had the lady that is in charge of the Wayne State Collection jury the show. So it gave it a little more credibility. 75th. So I wanted to make this really a special event because it's a milestone event. And I remember when I was a member in my college years, again, those posters you saw, Eastern Michigan's head of the art department did a poster for the Michigan Watercolor Society in 1969. I have a copy of that poster and I have a few others. And I said, I want to do it this year. I'm president. Who's going to stop me? And just in case my painting didn't get it in the show, the poster will. And of course, it didn't get in the show because the juror didn't see it. And we had our 3-day workshop with the juror for every annual event we do. They come and spend 3 days with us and have a workshop. And at the Danos, we had 18 people in there for this workshop. So the workshop that year was at my house, and we had 10, 12, 13 people. And I said, that painting you didn't pick for the show, it's staring right there. He said, I didn't pick that? And I'm going, now you got to stare at it for 3 days. So we laughed about it. But so we had it in Detroit. That was the whole goal for that year. Last, or 2 years ago, we were at Hope College at the Krasinga Museum. They picked the artwork that they wanted to represent the show, and it was a beautiful location. So we try to find the most professional looking places to have these shows. We've been at the Muskegon Museum of Art. We've been to a lot of places. And as I go through the archives, in fact, who was it? Someone sent me an email saying, you haven't been here. Oh, it was Ferris State College. They said, you haven't been here in about 10, 12 years. Is it time to come back here? I said, yeah, probably. So this was a beautiful venue in Holland. We were trying to get another location. They weren't ready for us. but they will be next time we come around. This was this year. So this is the marketing. There was no posters made, but when I did the 75th, we gave one to every person that entered the show. And this painting is right over here. It looks bigger here, doesn't it? And a fairly new member for us, and just a beautiful piece. The organization really works hard for this main event. This is really all we do until I got the energy to take on a secondary show. So I created, like we were talking about, a signature show. So when it doesn't quite work out for the annual, we'll do a signature show. So this year, in April, we were at the Charlevoix Circle of the Arts with our 60-piece signature show, which meant Vicki and I went up there at least 3 times in April to deliver, reception, pick up, and if I have to talk, maybe a 4th time. But I've been up here longer than I've been downstate this year, between Traverse City here and what's that? Yeah, yeah. My car likes it. So today we have annual exhibitions. We have a spring and fall meeting, usually in at the Bloomfield Township Library off of Telegraph and Lone Pine. I've tried another location just to diversify a little bit, and that was fun. People have asked us, when are you going to do it on the west side of the state or the north side of the state? And it takes people. It takes liaisons in these areas to coordinate with the core group to put on things. We do a quarterly newsletter. David Jordan, whose work is right here, he does our newsletter graphics. We submit the information. He dresses it up. And he was the guy in charge of the Michigan State University graphics department. So he's got all the toys, and he just loves doing that for us. With COVID, I had to create, fortunately, I had a 40-year career in IT. So I created Zoom calls for us. Our exhibitions were on Zoom. I went around to some of the artists, or we just did a Zoom call with them and to talk about their work, their style, try to put images with artists. And people liked it. I just haven't had time to do it much. Art exchange critiques. So what we try to do sometimes with our annual exhibitions, or even at travel shows like this, have the community come in, bring in a piece of work, and we'll critique it with them. I did it at Adrian Center for the Arts, and people enjoyed it. They had about 15 people that brought a piece. We talked about it, and they said, we should continue doing this. And I said, yes, you should. But I can't come up every time. But it brought that community together. And when I was just out of college, Michigan Watercolor had a select group called the Art Exchange. And we would get together. If you were lucky enough to be invited, we would get together at somebody's home. You bring what you're working on this month, and they would critique it with you. And as professionals, just like we did in college. And if you were a beginner, then, we went easy on you. If you were a professional, then we go, let's dive into the crux of what's not making this work. And we did it at our house a couple of times. I was fortunate enough to have Kingsley Calkins come, and I didn't know if Igor came beginning, my first watercolor professor at Eastern. I took his commercial art class, and he said, not for you. Take my watercolor class. And the rest was history. So workshops. Our juror does a 3-day workshop. So we pay for them to come into town. We wine and dine them, and they spend 3 days doing a workshop. But this year was Stan Kurtz from Scottsdale, or from Phoenix, abstract guy, taught us how to really pour on, not gesso, but gouache, white gouache. He uses pencils, pens, watercolor, And sometimes there might be a little image of something that's, you can tell what it is as a focal point, and then he covers it with a lot of gesso. And I used some of it. I couldn't pour it on like he did. I said, I'm enjoying these areas of nice watercolor transparency things. I don't want to cover them up, but it's fun. Again, our signature membership, that's our email. Any questions about Michigan watercolor before I move on? How's my time? Okay, doing good. Yes.
Of the organization and the history of the organization, that there was an emphasis, I forgot what it said, like personal expression or exploration or something, rather than just technical.
Right, right.
So,
it was a therapy group. No, again, these are all professors that started this organization. So they wanted to get you past learning how to paint. They wanted you to learn how you feel when you paint and what drives you to paint. I don't know about you guys, but when I see a piece of white paper, I want to attack it. I use mop brushes, and I'll show you. Well, this is me. And one, because I never had a lot of time to paint. I was working full time, but I about 16 years ago, I lost a buddy to cancer. And while he was going through this, I said, I'm going to do this painting of the Grand Canyon. We camped together at the bottom of the Grand Canyon. And I said, that'll be my way of thinking of him, and then I'll give him the painting. I didn't finish it in time. He died, and I gave it to his 19-year-old daughter for a wedding present. I shipped it to Colorado, and it was their only prized possession. And but I use that every day to say, okay, get off your butt, go do something. And there was a famous artist, I forget who it was, that said, don't wait for inspiration. It's all work. You got to go out and do it. Don't wait till you feel just right. And I haven't painted the last 6 weeks. I've been a high school tennis coach. And I had an extra week because these kids made it to state this past week. We were in Midland Monday and Tuesday. And I knew I had to be here on Thursday. So I said, well, I guess that's all going to work. And so they got to state, and the emotion of all that stuff with these kids. And of course, next year I'd lose 8 guys, so we're going to get clobbered. But I haven't had time to paint because in the mornings I was thinking, well, okay, what am I going to do with these kids when we get to practice? What am I going to work on today? And then dealing with all parent things and school things. And then before you know it, it's time to go practice. So yeah, I'm going to talk about this further here, so I won't spoil it yet. Any other questions? Did that kind of answer it? I mean, and we talk about that in some of our critique groups, because now I'm with Chelsea Painters with Linda. Thanks for having me part of the group. And because you have to be voted in. And I wasn't sure if I'd make the cut, but I guess I did. And so we get a chance to talk to each other while we're painting, drawing, whatever. I mean, it's multimedia. Different people are doing different things, so it's not a watercolor group. And you learn from each other. I don't know if you're in some of these classes, you just always learn. I find out about galleries. I learn a new technique. And even in our workshops, these people are coming in with new techniques, which I'll show you here, that I've learned by taking the workshops. I never had time to do that when I was working. But as president, you've got to be with the juror. You got to make sure he's got everything he needs. So I'm taking the workshop. Anyways, I'm very abstract. I always have been. I don't know what I'm going to do, but I attack the paper. And as it evolves, since I understand the elements of art, balance, tonal background, tension, all these kind of things, drawing, I eventually make it work for me. What on what techniques? I mean, for me, the first couple of washes is like virgin watercolor paper. You're dumping washes on, and then let it dry. And when it dries, it becomes something else. It doesn't look manipulated like an oil or acrylic where I do this, and that's exactly what it's going to look like. I need spontaneity. I need excitement in the painting, or I get bored. I'm sure I have ADHD, or did. I'm getting old now, so it's maybe wearing down. Uh, but wet on wet, for me, that first splash using a 1 or 2 inch mop brush. I buy watercolor paper by the roll. It's 44.5 inches by 15 yards. So I cut it to whatever size I want, which is terrible when you have to get these things framed because there's no standard. It's all custom framing. I'll talk about that as well. You know, I don't know about you guys, but Kingsley Calkins was a fan of black India ink. He said India ink is just so rich compared to trying to create black with watercolor. And and for me, I use it a lot. In fact, I buy it by the quart. I don't buy the little things that you squeeze out. I use that as an applicator sometimes, but I buy it by the quart from Blix, and I use it a lot. Yeah, you wash. When this stuff dries, like this stuff, I can't paint that. Uh, create, and again, there might have been some oil or something. So oil is another a technique that I've seen some use of because it creates all the spreading of the paint. And when I teach my workshop, we go through some of these things. And again, when you draw a line, I'm usually rolling the brush, so the line isn't the same consistency as it goes down. So when you're creating branches for a tree, it varies. Just like when you look at Lori Zervalik's painting, she does amazing work with these gardens. I mean, I've been seeing this work for 40 years, and right here. Now hers are a little more level, but you can see there's thicknesses and then thinness. So she's really kind of doing this. And when I paint, I'm doing this. I'm dancing all over the paper because I don't want it to be stagnant. And you see splashes. That might have been I had too much water in my hands from the brush, and I would just go like that. You didn't feed the dog, Linda. Repetition of patterns. You see those, the blue, kind of blue, using a flat brush and creating patterns, floating. So as you start building this stuff, it starts creating depth. It starts creating, could be a city scene, just with abstract elements like that. I did this for a lawyer friend of mine. He bought a painting from a gallery, and he says, I want you to do something at my law firm. This is in Columbus. So I said, well, I got to come down and take a look at it. And it was an old building that they restored into a law firm. And he wanted this for his office. Well, it turned out to be, I thought, too big for his office. It would have been better suited in the hallway somewhere. But it's in his office, and it was an urban setting. So I felt that urbanness from his actual law firm. And but they're all abstract elements. Uh,
Like the short north in Columbus, right? That middle part right there with
yeah.
that really looks like the short north. I can see parts of Columbus actually coming through.
It was probably subliminal because I was in the short north. I was in a gallery in the short north until I was in 2 galleries in the short north, and they both moved out or had to move out because it got gentrified. And one guy was there since the 70s.
So how about
This piece is probably, well, it's 45 by 5 feet. It's 5 foot piece. It's a little bit smaller than this, but because I only can go so far widthwise. Yes. In this case, it could have been casein. I'm not casein, gesso. I can't tell because I recently switched to white India ink from Winsor Newton. And that's what I use because it stays white, just like the gesso stays white on top. You can try to cover it up, but it typically stays white. I use French watercolor crayon, so I draw back into the painting. So when you get up close, you'll see a lot of detail versus looking at it from a distance and seeing the big picture. But you see the strength of the India ink and then painting over it. So it's not, there's layers and layers of stuff. I really enjoy this area. And I've been trying to reproduce this painting for 5 years, and I haven't mastered it. It was just, I was nervous about it because it's a commission piece, and he was happy with it. And I did another piece for his home. And so that was fun. Wet on wet, dry brush, using different brushes, angles of the brushes, different directions, creating different marks, patterns, a lot of this kind of stuff. It's building layers. You can still see behind, but it's building layers. I've added some more techniques that through workshops I've in. This is an older presentation. So a couple of years ago, we had a juror, came out of commercial art world or digital, whatever they call it today. And he uses automotive tape because automotive tape really sticks to the paper well. And as long as you've got high quality watercolor paper, you won't tear it. I've been using some Legends black watercolor paper, so everything is reversed. It's fun. It doesn't like tape though. It tears the paper. No, it's on top of it, and I haven't taken the tape off here, so that you can see the big tape because I can create. Yes, yeah, because it creates a clean straight edge, and also you've got all this darkness here. I can come over here with a wash, so it's not just white, and it complements. Again, watercolor is about transparency, building layers. And different size tapes, you can create curves, bends, whatnot. So I did a workshop a few months ago at the Oliver Center, and I brought out all the tools, and everyone had fun playing with them. What's hard in a workshop is you need time for the paint to dry. So if it doesn't dry, it just starts getting muddy. But I have found ways to bring paintings back to life. I had about 60, 70 paintings from grad school that I was taking from house to house as I was moving around. Some weren't where they needed to be. Others I framed and got into galleries, said, yeah, let's sell them. Back in 1976, paintings sold in the 2000s. So again, you can see the edges. It almost looks like a frame around the piece, but I love contrast. I can do all this organic, fun stuff, but yet I can have a straight edge that will create some balance, foundation for the painting. Here's two pieces. It's not a great photo. One on top sold in Dublin. And again, the automotive tape, creating kind of waves. I did a previous painting that is in our living room, similar to this, where I kind of tilted the painting so water would drip. I first let it puddle up along the top. You can see the residue of some of those areas on the top. And then I'd start building layers and let it drip. And when it drips, it's not going down in a straight line. It's going here, it's going there. And when it dries and stains the paper, it stains it differently with each application. So the lines that are coming down are different. More spontaneity. I have to look at this painting forever. I want it as interesting as I can make it. And then I tie it together with these splashes. Okay, yeah, I'm running out of time. Again, using squares versus organic splashes. And again, I'm doing this. This is a liquid acrylic. I think it's even the fluorescent kind. And just doing this and that. So again, I'm dancing all over this thing. This is 4 feet by 4 feet, this particular piece. Using masking fluid, and when you pull it off, I don't use that much anymore. I'd rather use the tape. It's cleaner. I'm not scrubbing it for a day because I've done 8-foot paintings with masking. I'm spending all day rubbing this thing off when I'm done with it and then having to sweep it off like it was wood stuff. And back about 15 years ago, before I just started to add more structure, is more Jackson Pollock-like, just using different techniques and tools. Here's where you can use acrylic medium on the paper to kind of create more tonal type things, not as vibrant, but yet kind of a contrast. So here's a piece that I did of my family's hometown in Italy. I've done about 7 or 8 of these paintings, and this side was covered with medium, and it helped create kind of that old stone effect. Again, using black India ink and then going back over and drawing it with French watercolor crayon. And again, I can take some of these lines that I draw with a mop brush, wet, scrub it out so it disappears, because we know it's a line. We know it's going to go from here to there. I don't have to see the whole line because it gets boring. I want your eye will do it anyways. India ink. And, it glows. If it was under what do you call those? Black lights, right? It would be awesome. I feel back like we're in the 60s. And this was a painting where it was all organic across, and I said, I need more structure. So I started using tape, putting barriers of India ink to contrast all the activity that's going on to help solidify the painting. Another I'm in the computer business, so I know about digital technology. The original painting is, like this. I had it blown up into 4 feet by 5 feet. And I picked up all the cracks in the gesso because you couldn't see it there. I did about 30 of these for my first solo show in 2009. I was just going to give it to people that came. The owner said, "You're not giving those away. We're selling them." I said, "Okay." So I took 3 of the paintings because I wanted to sell in a corporate arena and blew it up just to see the veils of transparency. Using digital tools, I'll take my paintings and create a grayscale, and just to see how it holds. That's the original, the far corner, and this is using different editing tools to kind of see, well, from a grayscale, does it hold as a painting, as if it was drawn, and then reversing it, maybe inverting the colors. So I've done a few paintings where I've inverted a section of the painting and then painted over it again. Here's a perfect example. The top one is the original. This is a giclée. Are you familiar with what a giclée is? So a giclée is an archival printed image of a digital image that's been, it doesn't have to be, that could be a giclée. I could print more prints of it if I'm selling. And the archival ink that they use in these Epson printers for giclées are good for 150 years. So this is a reverse of that painting. And this is in a, where is it? This is at the Dexter Library right now with our Chelsea Painters group. That's the advantage of being involved in some of these groups. You get your work out to different, somebody knows somebody somewhere, and you can get the pieces out there. I'd rather have it out than in my place. And this is, this painting pretty much, I didn't use a brush at all. It's a lot of pouring paint. I get a little Tupperware. So, you know, when you've got watercolor tubes that you can't squeeze anything out, there's still paint in there. So I soak them in water. And this was a 6 feet by 40 some inches. And I've got a ping pong table that I use as to work on. And I'm pouring and letting it dry, pouring, letting it dry. I think I used some masking and then I put liquid acrylic on top. And that's where it is now at these people's home.
Your work with glass.
Yeah, I think it's in here. I'll get to it. This is nothing more than a mop brush and creating splashes. And I did this one gallery in Dublin said, I love this. Why don't you do more of these? I did about 20. I still own them all. But I just did different variations of splashes, and it's spontaneous. I really can't paint that or want to, but to do it and let it dry is great. So this is a painting that got into University of Michigan Open Invitational. And again, the brush didn't touch the paper. This is all poured and dried. This is my 8-foot painting, and it is a reverse of one section of a painting. I had it blown up, reversed, put on watercolor paper, printed. Then I went back and reworked it with liquid acrylic. And this is going into the Crane Communication Building in Detroit as soon as I get home after being in the UP for the next week. This was in Michigan Watercolor Show 2021, wherever that was. And I just sold it in the gallery that we were just in a show in Canton. So that's gone. So I found a company that loves my artwork enough to, yes. Oh, okay. This will be the last slide. You can take a look at my website, but they take my images and create kitchen backsplashes or glass murals or doorways or shower doors. And I worked the Novi Home Show last week or whenever that was. And I said, look, I haven't painted in 6 weeks because of tennis. Let me bring some work. I'll paint and maybe it'll attract some people to your business. And so they said, well, we're going to do one better. You knock out your artwork. We'll have people put their names in for a raffle. And whatever one they pick, we'll turn it into glass. So they got 200 people to drop in the cards. I knocked out 4 pieces in 4 hours, just 19, similar to the size of the glass. I felt good because I felt productive, and I hate talking to people. So it was a fun day. So these are samples of them using my artwork in various applications. So you can take your artwork. It's like going to a museum store and seeing a Monet coffee cup or a Picasso umbrella or T-shirts. The work is this is my kitchen. Vicky, I did a whole series of paintings. They were finished paintings, and she said, I haven't had my coffee yet. I don't have to look at this stuff before I have coffee. She says, make it simple. 2 days of washes, and that's what we got. So you can see that on my website. Yeah.
right? Because there's no crowd. And it's antimicrobial by nature. You just clean it with Windex and you're done. And we're Italian, right? So spaghetti sauce, it's like for dog.
Social media is key if you want to get out there. You've got to make friends. I connected with my high school, college, all that stuff. And so when I have a show, they all come out. They could care less about the artwork, but it's a meeting place. So yeah, this was that original mushroom thing. But this is my gallery. 1,000-square-foot gallery. And I worked with a company in Ann Arbor at the time that you would click on these dots and all the information on the painting was there. They have since stopped doing it for free. So this is just my information. And I have these catalogs. You asked questions. I can't remember. I think it was you asked a few questions.
I would love to have it, but
would you like this? Okay. You're a painter. My card is right here. And if you're interested in joining the Michigan Watercolor Society, I have a postcard there. With that, thank you.
Comment, some